She found out her husband had gotten another woman pregnant on a Tuesday. She was carrying dried valerian in a wicker basket. The great hall smelled like beeswax and wood smoke and the particular warmth of a place that had been hers for 5 years. She had been happy walking in. Genuinely, stupidly happy. She had been thinking about whether the evening meal needed more salt. Then she saw the copper-haired woman standing next to Aldrich. Then she saw the belly. The basket hit the floor. Dried herbs scattered across the flagstones like an accusation. Nobody moved to help her pick them up. Not Aldrich. Not the woman. Not the 12-pack members lining the walls, all of whom found something intensely interesting to study in their own boots. Alara looked at her husband. He looked back with the controlled, careful expression of a man who had rehearsed this moment, who had stood in front of a mirror or paced in this very room, and decided in advance exactly how his face was going to sit. She hated that he'd rehearsed it. She hated that she could tell. 5 years of marriage teaches you a man's face the way 5 years of weather teaches you a coastline. Every expression, every tell, the particular way his jaw set when he'd already decided something and did not intend to be moved. His jaw was set now. She understood, looking at it, that this conversation had already ended before she arrived. The woman's name was Seraphine. Copper hair braided back from high, sharp cheekbones. Green eyes that moved through the room with inventory precision. The gown she wore was deep burgundy silk, embroidered at the hem in patterns that took weeks to complete. Custom work, made to fit her specific body. She had been here long enough to have gowns made. The scent reached Alara before anything else assembled in her mind. In a pack, scent is the one testimony that cannot be coached or rehearsed or delivered with a carefully neutral expression. What rose from Seraphine's skin was layered and warm and deeply, specifically familiar. Not Seraphine's scent. Aldrich's. His warmth. The particular darkness of his wolf that Alara had slept beside for 5 years. Layered into another woman. Settled. The way a scent settles when it has been there long enough to belong. Alara's fingers went numb at the tips. The numbness climbed. Wrists. Forearms. Her chest did not crack open the way it should have. It compressed instead, like something vital was being very slowly, deliberately folded in on itself. Alara. His voice was even. The voice he used for border disputes. For delivery of hard news to pack counsel. Not for his wife of 5 years. Sit down. I'm standing, she said. Her own voice came from somewhere else entirely. Calm, completely unrecognizable as hers. He sat instead, at the head of the table. His chair, his hall, the posture of a man using his authority to make an unbearable conversation easier to have. He folded his hands. He looked at her with iron-gray eyes that held something she might once have called pain. She could not afford to call it that right now. The pack requires an heir, he said. This is not a new problem. We have discussed. We discussed trying. The word was out before she'd finished deciding to say it. We discussed healers, remedies, patience. We did not discuss. Her eyes moved to Seraphine's belly. 2 months along, perhaps 3, past the place where it was still a question. How long, she said. Not asked. Stated. Flat. Aldrich did not flinch. She had always loved that about him. The steadiness. The way nothing rattled him. She found it intolerable now. Long enough to be certain, he said. Seraphine moved to his side with the ease of a woman who has already won and knows it. She did not touch him. She did not need to. She rested her hand on the table's edge near his. 6 inches of polished oak between their fingers. A proximity that said mine in a language older than words. I have no quarrel with you, Seraphine said. Her voice was warm, carefully designed to sound like reason. Truly, Alara. The pack needs what you couldn't provide. That is not anyone's fault. Her green eyes held practiced compassion. Some wolves simply cannot. She let the sentence end there. The room understood. Alara looked at Aldrich. She waited. She had watched him defend her in 100 different rooms. Pack members who questioned her bloodline. Merchants who addressed him instead of her. Elders who felt Aluna should be quieter, more decorative. Aldrich had stepped into every one of those conversations and shifted the weight without being asked. Because she was his and he was hers. A fact too obvious to require defense. He looked at the floor. For seconds of silence. For seconds that rewrote everything she thought she knew about the previous 5 years. I want you to stay. His voice was still controlled. Your position would remain adjacent. You would want for nothing material. The pack bond need not. Adjacent. The word left her mouth like something she was putting down permanently. You want me to be your mistress while your mistress becomes your wife. The formal pairing is a political necessity. Elder Corvith has already. Stop. He stopped. She breathed. Deliberate. The breath of someone choosing their next words with complete precision. Let me make sure I understand. I stay. She stays. I become the quiet one in the background while she gets the seat, and the title, and the child. She held his gaze. Nothing in her face moved. And in exchange, I want for nothing material. It wouldn't have to be as stark. You are no longer my alpha. Somewhere along the wall, someone drew a sharp breath. And I will never be your shadow. She walked out with her spine straight, and her chin level. She did not look at Seraphine. She did not look at the scattered Valerian. She did not look at the 12 witnesses who would carry this moment out of the hall in their mouths by nightfall. She climbed the stairs, turned left into the small room that had always been entirely hers. Her herbalist's cabinet, her moon charts, the shelf of small accumulated things that were, taken together, the material evidence of a life. She closed the door. Then she slid down it until she was sitting on the cold flagstone floor, pressed her fist against her mouth, and made a sound she had never made before. Not crying. This was rawer than crying. The sound that lives underneath it. The sound a wolf makes when it realizes mid-stride that the ground has simply ceased to exist beneath her feet. That there has been nothing below for some time. That the speed she has been moving has been, in fact, a free fall in disguise. She made the sound until it stopped. Then she sat in the quiet and began to think. She left before dawn. The Greymore gates ran 12 guards on rotation. The south wall had a drainage channel, barely wide enough for a human body if the body was not proud about it. Alara had found it 3 years ago and reported it to Aldrich as a security risk. He had said he would see to it. He had not. She went through on her hands and knees in the dark, her satchel pushed ahead of her, face 2 inches from the cold, wet ground. She kept moving. She did not shift. Wolf prints in soft mud are a story anyone with tracking sense can read. She went as a woman. Dark wool cloak. The satchel cinched tight with everything she had quietly assembled over the past month. 60 silver coins, a short blade, a vial of nightshade compound, 3 pouches of scent-masking herbs accumulated 1 or 2 sprigs at a time from the herbalist's inventory so nothing would be missed. Not because she had planned to run. She had simply known in some quiet animal part of herself that operated below intention, that she might need to. That part had been preparing while the rest of her was still choosing to believe things were fine. She walked into the dark and did not look back. The mate bond hit her at the tree line. She had been braced for it. She had told herself it would feel like a snap. Clean, sharp and terrible and over. It did not snap. It pulled. With every step away from Greymore, it stretched, not at some single point of attachment, but through her. Through her sternum and spine and the soft places at the base of her throat. It had been grown into her rather than fastened to her surface. Each step cost something. She walked until she could not feel her feet. Then she walked further. She became Mira. No particular family. No particular pack. A journeywoman herb gatherer. A fever had taken her people. She didn't like to talk about it. The scent-masking tonic she brewed each morning, wormwood, white willow bark, river clay and cold water, tasted like diluted boot leather from a boot that had not had a good life. It left her nauseous for the first hour of every day without exception. She drank it every morning. Without exception. Ash Hollow was not the kind of place people chose. It was the kind of place the road deposited you when all the other roads had run out. 40-something houses. A mill. A smithy. 2 taverns, the decent one on the main square, and the Iron Antler at the road's bend, which had sticky tables and a landlord who did not ask what you were running from. Alara got a job at the Iron Antler. She poured ale for miners and merchants, and the occasional wolf trader passing through. She kept her head down and her nostrils open and watched every new face with the peripheral attention of someone counting on not being found. Nobody's face changed the way a face changes when it catches a scent it recognizes. The tonic was working. She was nobody. For now, that was enough. She slept above the smithy. The forge heat came up through the floorboards all night. The walls were thin and she could hear the 2 apprentices below. A constant low argument about technique that had the comfortable rhythm of something that had been happening for years. She did not mind it. Silence was worse. Silence left room for the things she was not ready to think about yet, the things she was keeping in a very small, very tightly closed space inside her chest. She listened to the apprentices argue. She let herself sleep. The floor went sideways on a Thursday. She recognized the warning signs, the peripheral dimming, the crowd noise going strangely muffled. She was carrying a tray with 6 full tankards. She sat down on the bench directly behind her. The tray went the other way. The healer who came was a compact, gray-haired woman named Sybil. Midwife physician. She sat across from Alara without being invited, pressed 2 fingers to her wrist, and looked at the middle distance in the way of someone reading information only they can see. When did you last bleed? The herb tonic disrupts the cycle, Elara said. It's normal. Sybil pressed a carved bone to the pulse at Elara's throat. Was quiet. You're not sick. I know I'm not. You're with child. The words arrived and sat there. Elara heard them, then heard them again. Tried to fit them into the current shape of her life. Woman without a name, without a pack, drinking chalk tonic at dawn and pouring ale and sleeping above a forge. The words did not fit. That's not possible, she said. I've been doing this 30 years, said Sybil, with the mild, immovable patience of a woman who has heard this sentence more times than she can count. It is quite confirmed. I was told. Elara stopped. Her hands were flat on the table. She breathed. 3 healers. 5 years of examination. They were all in agreement. I could not carry. Sybil looked at her with the expression of a woman placing a single data point into a much larger and suddenly very interesting pattern. Did they, she said. Not a question. The understanding came the way the worst understandings come. Not like a revelation, like a tide coming in, realizing as the water reaches your knees that you have been standing in it for a very long time, that the cold has been happening to you for years. 5 years of apologies she had not owed. 5 years of watching Aldrich's face go carefully neutral when the topic of heirs came up. 5 years of being the problem, the deficient one. 3 independent medical conclusions, all pointing the same direction, delivered with such careful professional regret. All of it invented, and now a child growing in the body that had supposedly been broken all along. A single thought cut through everything else, clean and cold. When Aldrich finds out, and he will find out, this child becomes leverage. She would not go back. Not as his Luna. Not as his shadow. Not as a warm container for the heir his other woman had promised him first. She would not go back. What do I owe you? She asked Sybil. Her voice was completely steady. She was genuinely surprised by herself. 3 copper. Sybil took the coins, then paused with the practiced blankness of a woman who has kept secrets for 30 years. Whatever you're running from, girl. The mountains west make poor trackers of most men. She stood, gathered her bag. The western road, she added, already turning, is clear at this time of year. She took the western road before dawn. No plan beyond the direction. Away from his trackers. Away from the eastern territories where he knew her habits and every herbalist she had ever bought from. Bryn had mentioned the Thornwood once, years ago, in the way things are mentioned when the speaker does not want to be too explicit. Late evening, both of them more tired than was good for honesty. If you're ever in real trouble, Bryn had said. Real trouble, go west. Past the Thornwood road. The Thornwood is warded, Elara had said. Yes, Bryn had said. It is. She had said nothing else. Elara had not asked. She was asking now, with her feet, walking westward in the thin cold morning light, 3 months pregnant and operating entirely on instinct, and the particular forward momentum of a woman who has run out of other options and found, to her own surprise, that running out of options was clarifying. She reached the Thornwood in the thin gray hour before sunset. And it announced itself. Not the way forests announce themselves, not with the gradual fade of open air into canopy shade, not with birdsong trading for rustling. Not anything that happened over time or distance. A threshold. She was on the road, 20 feet of ordinary ground between her and the first trees. She stepped forward. Cold. Not the cold of walking into shade. A discreet threshold. 1 step warm, the next, something else. As if the air on either side had been arranged by different authorities, subject to different rules. Elara stopped. Her rational mind assembled a short list. Turnaround led the list heavily. She did not turn around. She walked in. The light changed within 40 steps. Afternoon gold became something older, gray-amber, filtering through the canopy at the wrong angle, catching the undersides of branches rather than the tops, moving as if from a source she could not locate. The trees were enormous. Not merely old, enormous in the geological sense, in the sense of things that have been here long enough that time itself has filed them under permanent. Bark thick as castle walls. Roots disappearing into rock with the calm assurance of things that have been below it longer than the rock has been above. Moss on everything, deep gray-green velvet, deliberate architectural. Fungal rings on the forest floor. Too perfect to be accidental. Too regular to be natural. The sound went between one step and the next. The road behind her ceased to exist acoustically. No wind. No birdsong. Nothing. The silence of a space that is not empty but full, packed tight with something that displaced sound the way water displaces air. Elara's breathing was very loud. She counted her inhales. 1, 2, 3. She kept walking. Her wolf pressed against the inside of her skin. Not the low pressure of suppression. Not the tight coil of threat response. Something she had no clean word for, both species of her, human and wolf, simultaneously fully alert, the way they were usually not. Usually they were in conversation, negotiating, one louder than the other. Now both were very quiet. Both listening. Both paying identical attention to the same direction. The path wound between the enormous trunks with a purposefulness that had nothing to do with clearing or maintenance. The roots arranged themselves to allow passage. The branches stayed high. The path existed the way paths exist in dreams, because someone needed to walk it. She turned a gentle curve. She stopped. Something was watching her. Not predatory watching. Not threat assessing. Aware of her. The way a place is aware. The way old water is aware. She had been inside its observed field since the threshold. She was only now realizing it. Her feet stopped. She had not told them to. She stood in the middle of the path and understood, in the wordless register below thought, that the stillness she had just walked into was not empty. The air changed. The shadows moved, not as shadows move when light shifts, but as shadows move when they are given a direction and accept it simultaneously. Every shadow in her peripheral vision reoriented, pointing, not at her, at something behind her and to the left, with the unanimous agreement of things responding to a signal. She turned around. He was there, 40 feet away, at the junction of two paths she had not seen before this second. Either she'd been turned around in the strange light, or the paths had appeared when he appeared. She filed both possibilities without ruling either out. He was tall. She registered this, then registered it again, because the first pass hadn't captured it. Not the height of a man who knows he is tall and leads with it. The height of something that simply is, standing stone tall, old tower tall. Proportioned for a different scale than the one she was used to. Perfectly still between the roots of two enormous trees. The absolute stillness of something that has been still for a very long time and does not need to move to communicate anything. His hair was the color of winter light through ice. Not white. White was a statement. Not silver. Silver was a metaphor. The specific pale gold that light achieves in January through old ice at morning. Simultaneously cold and luminous, carrying the memory of warmth while being something else entirely. Flat against his shoulders. Straight. The hair of something that had been the same way for a long time. His ears. She noticed immediately. The slight upward point at the tip, visible through the fall of pale hair. The skin fine over the cartilage. Not a wolf. Not anything she had a category for. His clothing was dark. Layered. Well-made in the way of very old well-made things. Not fashionable, not signaling wealth. Simply constructed to last, by someone who did not expect it to need replacing. His eyes were violet. She had seen violet eyes in Wolfborn before. She had been prepared for violet. She was not prepared for these. Fractured. The way a gemstone is fractured. Not broken but structured. Too many planes of depth to be a single thing. Light moved through them the way light moves through something that has more interior than exterior should allow. They were looking at her. Had been looking at her. She understood this immediately. They had been looking at her for considerably longer than the last 10 seconds. Not with hunger. Not with threat assessment. With recognition. The expression of a man looking at something he has been expecting. Not surprised. Not relieved. Simply arrived. Neither of them moved. The silence between them had weight. Texture. The specific quality of something accumulated. Held and stored and carried forward. Only now being allowed to take up its full space. She became aware of several things simultaneously. Her heart was beating faster than authorized. Not fear faster. Something else. The particular rhythm of a body receiving information it does not yet know how to process. Her wolf was completely still. Not suppressed. Not afraid. Waiting. He looked at her the way she had looked at very old things, at the carved stones at Voldemort, at bone records so old the pigment had shifted from its original color, and you were seeing both what it was and what it had been simultaneously. Not discovery. Recognition. Like finding something he had known about long before finding it. The back of her neck prickled. "You've walked far," he said. His voice was low. Even. Not the deliberate evenness of a man managing his register. The natural quality of a voice that had simply never needed to be louder to reach whoever it was speaking to. It arrived the way sound arrives in an old stone hall, distributed, present, impossible to locate to a single source. It landed in the clearing like a stone in still water. Not breaking. Just changing the surface. Starting rings. Something in Alara's chest pressed outward. She breathed against it carefully and said nothing. "You came through the eastern approach," he continued. Still not moving. Past the lightning-struck beach at the wood's edge. No one told you to go around. He had been watching her from before the lightning-struck beach. Before she had felt anything. He had let her walk all the way in. "I didn't know anyone was here," she said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. She was making a practice of being surprised by herself. No one usually is. He shifted his weight, not toward her. 1 degree of ease, as if the conversation had passed some evaluation and he was permitting himself that much relaxation. This wood is mine. Those who know it take the paths that lead around. I didn't know. I know. Something in his voice changed. One note held at rest for a very long time, now allowed a small motion. You came through because no one told you not to. A pause. You could have turned me back earlier, she said, because she was tired and had very little left to lose in terms of social calculation. Yes, he said without hesitation. I could have. He had not. The not explanation sat between them with the stillness of something both parties understood below words. You are not here by accident, he said. Matter of fact. Weather reading. No, she agreed. I'm running. From the Greymore pack. How do you know that? He looked at her for a long moment. In the gray-gold light, those fractured violet eyes held something old. Patient. The expression of someone offering one careful piece of a much larger truth. Not to mislead, but because the whole of it was not yet the right thing to give. I have been watching the roads from Greymore, he said. Many roads. For a very long time. A pause. The trees held it the way deep stone holds cold. Waiting, he said. She looked at him across 40 feet of silence and ancient roots. For what? The quality of the light changed. Not the direction, the depth of it. The gray-amber darkening by 1 degree. The fractured violet of his eyes catching the shifting light, and holding it in a way eyes should not hold light. And beneath his voice, in the frequency too low to be sound, more vibration than register, traveling through the ground she stood on, something resolved. Like a chord sustained so long you stopped hearing it as tension and only rediscover it as such in the moment of release. For the one the prophecy named, he said. Level. Even. Carrying no more weight than the words themselves, because the words themselves were already carrying everything. For the woman who would walk into the thornwood on a winter afternoon and not turn back. He looked at her. I had wondered for a long time what you would look like. His eyes moved over her face with the slow, deliberate attention of a man reading something he has been waiting an extremely long time to read. Not cataloging. Not assessing. Reading. The prophecy was precise, he said. The blood went strange in Alara's veins. A pressure built beneath her sternum. Heavy. Not entirely unpleasant. Not comfortable. The structural sensation of a container being tested by something it was built to hold, but has not held before. The fear arrived second. This was the thing she would notice later. The heart faster, the blood strange, the chest pressure came first. The fear arrived like a reasonable person late to a situation that less reasonable parts of the body had already decided. She was afraid. She was also something else she did not have a name for yet. Both things were true simultaneously. Both were real. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. You will. He turned, unhurried, with the ease of something that has all the time in the world, because it genuinely does, and the path ahead responded. Lengthened. The deep interior of the wood presenting itself in the direction of his movement with the docility of something that knows its master. You need food. You're tired. You've walked 3 days and you are carrying more than you expected. The word carrying landed with multiple weights. She could not determine which he intended. All of them, possibly. Come, he said. He did not look back. She stood in the clearing for 10 seconds. Every rational part of her. Absolutely not. Unknown entity. Warded forest. Prophecy. Unknown entity. Her wolf, nothing. Not suppressed nothing. Not afraid nothing. Already decided nothing. She followed him into the dark. His name was Salander. He told her this over a table in a hall older than anything she had a reference point for. That evening. Simply. Without ornamentation. The way a man tells you something when he has long since stopped feeling the need to make information larger than it is. She said it back to herself once, quietly. The syllables fit oddly in her mouth. Not foreign old. A very old word in a language she half knew. Familiar in structure but strange in specific weight. He watched her do this with the expression she was beginning to recognize. A man encountering something new in a life that had contained very little new for a very long time. The hall was old stone. The kind that retains heat not from the fire in the vast hearth, but from its own deep memory of warmth accumulated over centuries. The ceiling was high and lost itself in shadow. The furniture was dark, heavy, unornamented. The candles burned without flickering. Nothing here flickered. She noticed this on the second night. Everything was still, not the stillness of absence, but of things arranged by something that does not move unless it means to. She found, to her own surprise, that she was sleeping. Deeply. without the shallow, vigilant half-sleep that had been all she could manage for a month. She filed this. He told her about the prophecy in pieces across evenings, in the measured unhurry of a man who understood that information given too fast is not received. The prophecy had not described her. It had named her. Not her name, but her. The specific arriving. This woman this afternoon, this path through the eastern approach past the lightning-struck beach. Written into the foundation stone of this hall before the Greymore Pack existed. Before anyone currently living had been born. She was, in the language of the prophecy, the one who would walk in carrying what had been kept from her. He had spent considerable time wondering about the phrase. He now understood it to have been precise. She sat with this on the third night. "You knew I was coming," she said. "I knew someone was coming." He looked at her across the candle. The knowing was not specific until it was. When did it become specific? When you crossed the threshold. A pause. Before that, if I am honest. When I saw you on the eastern road, still a mile from the Treeline. She looked at him. "That is," she said carefully, somewhat unsettling behavior. The corner of his mouth moved. Barely. The almost nothing of a man unaccustomed to amusement who is experiencing something approximating it. "I have been told," he said, "that my timelines are occasionally difficult for others to work with." Bryn came to the Thornwood's edge 8 days after Alara walked in. She would not go inside. She stood at the Treeline with the composure of a woman who has decided to be afraid competently rather than not at all. She handed a folded letter across the threshold. "Burn it when you're done. Don't read it here." "How did you find me?" Alara asked. "You're still buying wormwood and white willow in the same ratios. The herb seller at Greyfen has a cousin in Ash Hollow." Bryn's eyes moved fast and professional to Alara's midsection. Then back up. She kept her face entirely still. "He's going feral." "Good. Alara." "Bryn." A pause. The forest between them was quiet. He dismantled the inner chamber entirely. Slept in the courtyard for 2 weeks. His wolf won't settle. He nearly killed Elder Corvith at the last council session. Would have if his second hadn't physically removed him from the room. Something moved through Alara's chest that she catalogued and refused to name. "That's between him and Corvith." Elder Corvith arranged the match. Bryn's voice was even. "Careful. The letter explains it. There is more to this than you have been allowed to know." She said nothing else. She looked. "Don't," Alara said. "I haven't said anything. Keep not saying it." Bryn held her gaze. The expression of a woman containing a great deal. Then, "His trackers don't have a location on you. The tonic is holding, but they have a direction south-southwest. Stay inside the wood. Don't go back to the road." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Alara, you were never the problem." Her jaw tightened. "Someone made sure you believed you were." She walked back through the trees before Alara could answer. The letter was short. Bryn's intelligence always was short sentences, specific facts, no embellishment. Elder Corvith had been steering pack politics for years toward a northern alliance. Seraphine's family, land and power, the kind of arrangement that required a different Luna in Greymore's seat. He had cultivated relationships, waited patiently, and managed the obstacle, Alara, with precision. The fertility diagnosis had been fabricated by a healer in Corvitha's direct employ. Every follow-up examination across 5 years had been performed by healers selected from a list Corvith controlled. The examinations had been real. The results had been invented, delivered to Aldrich with clinical certainty, with apologies, with all the authority of expert consensus. Aldrich had believed them. Of course he had. He was not a healer. He had a mate he loved, she knew this, even now, and 3 independent medical conclusions all pointing the same direction. He had believed the reports. He had looked at her, across 5 years, and chosen the reports over her. This was the distinction she kept returning to. Not that he had been deceived, he had been, systematically, by someone very skilled. This was real. This would always be a mitigating factor. But he had also, every time he went carefully neutral, made a choice. 1,000 small choices to trust the paperwork over the person. She burned the letter. She watched it go. The letter said Seraphine's pregnancy was considerably less confirmed than claimed. The neutral midwife called for independent verification, had found no evidence of a child at any stage. A binding, worn under the gown, supplemented progressively over weeks. Alara sat with this. Then she picked up her bag and began deciding what came next. Salander was in the corridor when she came through it. The candle in his hand did not flicker. He looked at her with those fractured violet eyes, and something moved through them that she had been quietly mapping for 10 days. Not desire in the urgent sense. Something older. Something desire was a fast approximation of. The way a river approximates the geological movement that cut its valley. "You're leaving," he said. Moving forward, she corrected. Different thing. A pause. The south road is clear. I had it checked last night. She stopped. You had it checked. I know the Greymore trackers. I know the gaps. The south road at this hour is clear for approximately 6 miles before the next patrol rotation. She looked at him. He returned the look with the composure of someone who does not understand why this would surprise anyone. Thank you, she said. He is coming himself, Saylander said. Aldrich. South. No trackers. I thought you should know before you make your decisions. I know. A silence. Ilara. It was still strange, hearing her name in his voice. She had stopped wondering how he knew it. This place will be here, he said. When you have done what you need to do. The wood does not close itself to those who have walked it. She held his gaze. The warm, deep, patient weight of it. Is that the prophecy talking? She said. The ghost of something crossed his face. The closest thing to a smile she had seen from him. Unguarded in the specific way of someone who has been guarded so long that the smallest relaxation is visible. That one, he said, is mine. She almost smiled back. She was not ready, but almost. She walked south in the clear, cold pre-dawn dark. Aldrich came 3 nights later. In a storm. He appeared in the doorway of the way house at the wood's edge as if the storm had simply decided to deposit him there. Soaking wet, coat torn at the shoulder, 3 days of dark stubble on a jaw she knew as well as her own hands. His iron-gray eyes had gone wrong in the specific way they went wrong when the wolf underneath was at the very edge of what discipline could hold. He looked like a man who had been running and refused to stop. Because stopping meant acknowledging what he had done. He stood in the doorway and looked at her across the room. His gaze dropped. Stopped. She watched his face do the thing faces do when they receive information that restructures everything around it. Not just new information, but information that retroactively changes the meaning of everything before it. The sound he made was not a word. He crossed to her in 3 strides and stopped. 6 feet between them. Every line of him pulled tight against something he was refusing to permit himself. His hands open at his sides. Not reaching. She could see what that cost him. Visible in the tension of his forearms. I didn't know. The rehearsed quality was gone. The controlled expression was gone. Just Aldrich, 5 years of him raw and tired. About the healer. About Corvith. Ilara, I swear to you they told me, every examination, every report. I know what they told you, she said. I should have questioned it. I should have gone to an outside examiner. Yes, she said. You should have. He broke. With the particular quality of something that has been holding too much weight for too long. Not dramatically, not with announcement. The back of his hand came up to cover his mouth. His shoulders shook once, hard, and then the Alpha King of Greymore was on his knees on the flagstone floor, and the sound that came from him came from somewhere underneath the Alpha, underneath the King, from the place where there was simply a person who had looked at his hands and understood what he had done with them. She waited until it stopped. You didn't need to know about the child, she said. Quiet. Level. That was never what this was about. You had 5 years of knowing me. They gave you a report. You chose the report. He looked up at her. His eyes were wrecked. I know, he said. That is not a mistake that was made for you. That came from inside you. From a place that found it easier to believe you had a broken mate than to believe something was wrong with what you were being told. He did not flinch. She had always known he wouldn't. I know, he said again. I'm not going back. She said it before he could find any words. I have land in the Southern Highlands. My mother's bloodline. They've already sent word. She breathed. The child is yours. I know that. I won't use it against you. But right now this child is mine, and my life is mine, and I am not going back to be your Luna or your adjacent or your anything. You loved me, he said. Quietly. A man holding the only fact he has left. Yes, she said. I think I might always. She stepped back. But love without trust is not a home, Aldrich. She looked at him on the floor. All the familiar configurations of his face. It is a very beautiful cage. And I am done with cages. Go home, she said. Be a better king. You know now what you didn't know before. That matters. She let herself look at him once more, long and full, the kind of look you take when you are putting something down and you know you are. Then she turned. Behind her, nothing for a long time. Then she heard him stand. Then she heard him walk into the storm. She did not go to the window. Watching the door someone has gone through is not the same as holding on to them. It is just watching a door. She breathed. She let it be over. Saylander was in the corridor. He said nothing. He did not perform sympathy or fill the space. He simply stood in the candlelight, present still, looking at her with those fractured violet eyes that held centuries of patient distance, and beneath it, the compressed warmth she had been mapping for 10 days. The prophecy, she said. What does it say happens next? It doesn't. Quiet. It ends with the arriving. The rest is left to the people inside it. That's a significant design flaw. All prophecies have them. They are written by people who can see what will be and not what should be. The distance between those two things is where the people inside them have to live. She looked at him. He looked back. That warm, deep, endless patience. All of it here. All of it pointed at her in the candlelight. I need to get to the Highlands, she said. I know. I need to build something. I know. And then I need to figure out, she stopped. She wasn't sure how to finish it. She wasn't sure she needed to. Ilara. His voice was even, but warm. The specific warmth of something very controlled allowing itself one deliberate unclosing. I have waited considerably longer for considerably less certain things. I am not in a hurry. She laughed. Short and real and slightly surprised. The laugh of a person who had not expected to find anything funny for quite some time and has been caught off guard by the deadpan patience of an ancient fey man who had been waiting for her arrival since before her grandmother was born. It lasted 3 seconds. Then it was over. But it had happened. It had been real. She filed it away. And then, and this was different from the filing she had been doing, decided she was going to come back for it. That some of these things deserved to be named eventually. To the north, Aldrich rode home through the storm. Alone. He would watch her borders for the rest of his life. Not because he had any right to. Because it was the only thing left he could do for her that she hadn't refused. He had fought every war that had come to him. He had not known, until this one, that a man could lose a war he had been winning for 5 years. The storm did not care. The road did not care. He rode north. And Ilara, in the warm, deep hall of the Thornwood, was making a list. Practical things. The Highland Road clear by morning. Who among her mother's people to contact first. What the first month required. What the child would need. What she would need to be, in order to build the things she was going to build. She was good at lists. She had spent 5 years applying this skill to other people's problems. She was going to apply it to her own. The life she was building would be hers. Entirely. No adjacent. No shadow. No carefully neutral face deciding how much of the official version to believe. Hers. Cold air on the other side of the smoke. Ordinary, brilliant, completely ungoverned. She breathed it in. She picked up her pen. She began.